Hey everyone, it's Barb. Welcome back to the Innerverse of Business and Life. Today's episode is one I've really been looking forward to. I'm joined by Jenny Gering, an incredibly talented costume designer. Her work has been showcased on the Diplomat, Dope Thief, and a lot more. But what makes this conversation so special isn't her impressive resume, it's the story behind the scenes. Jenny and I first got connected when she was feeling the pressure of this high demand career and just wondering if it might be time for a change. And what followed was a deep internal reset. Soon after that, she got an opportunity, and as you're going to hear her say in our conversation, that experience on that show became one of the most fulfilling and joyful jobs in her career. Now, not because the chaos disappeared and the demands went away and the big personalities weren't there, but because she was showing up from a different place inside. Today, she shares what it means to trust yourself in the unknown, how she stopped managing everyone else's emotions to feel more comfortable herself, and how she navigates that intensity with more clarity, resilience, and grace. Whether you're a creative, a leader, or simply someone navigating big change and shifts or big personalities, I think that you're really going to learn a lot from Jenny. So as always, I'm so grateful you're here. If you know anyone that would benefit from this conversation, please share it. And without further delay, here's Jenny. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I know. I've been looking forward to this. I think the podcast is just one way I get to make sure I stay in contact with people I admire and love. So thank you for saying yes. I thought maybe a place for us to just begin is, in getting to know you and hearing your journey, your career. I think there's so many fascinating places to go. But why don't you just give us a high level about kind of the path, and then as you do that, I may interject and have you, take a deeper dive.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because I find myself in a mentorship position quite a bit because I hire younger people when I'm on a project to come in and work as PAs, and I become very invested in, where they want to go, what it is that they actually want to do. I want to make sure that they're placed, because I work in film and TV, I always get friends, kids, that sort of thing. When you talk to so-and-so, and I absolutely love that. But I always want to make sure that I hopefully can get them in the right place. Do they want to come and work for me in the costume department? Do they want to work, in the production office, in art department? And, the first question is, they always say, well, how did you get to where you are? How did you, get involved in this? And I just didn't have the traditional path. For me, it was I felt at the time very haphazard. Looking back, you would probably say, it's a lot more linear than I thought. But I was really in my mid-20s. I really was not that person who knew what I wanted to do when I was at school. I majored in sociology. I really had no idea. And I moved out to Los Angeles when I was about 25. And I thought, okay, well, I'm here. I'm going to try everything. I will say yes to everything. That's the only way I'll figure things out. And so I did. I joined a temp agency, and I worked at, it's a one industry town. So wherever I wound up, it was in the film industry or TV. But I just kept saying yes. And I wound up assisting just because someone said, hey, I know a fashion stylist who works on commercials. She needs an assistant. Of course, yes, I'll try it. And that was the first time I ever felt like the various skills that I had that I thought were frankly useless coalesced, and I thought, oh, I'm good at this. I'm good at something, and all these things that I know I love and that I am good at actually come together, and art could be a career. And it just felt so natural to me. And that was how I started, because it just felt like, oh, this makes sense to me. And I'd never felt that before.
Yeah. And I'm curious, would you say, like, when I listen to that, I hear you followed your natural curiosity, you said yes to a lot of things without, and then in that discovered, right? Like, kind of discovered more about yourself. And then this opportunity came, this match came. Would you say, like, that's how you've done your whole career?
Well, I am a naturally curious person, and um, I I hate to back away from a challenge. So probably yes, and it's
Yeah.
just because that is how I'm wired. If something comes up that scares me, or I don't think I'm good enough to do it, I truly am the poster child for fake it till you make it, because I will just try it. And I'll think this couldn't have come to me if, the universe didn't think I was ready for it, or that I can handle it. And so I have always just, I mean, truly, I'll just, I'll say yes and figure it out, you know. Um, and there's a lot that I have learned along the way in knowing that I'm like that. Um, it's making sure I surround myself with very talented people who, let's say, are good at things that I'm not good at. So I always, I think I learned very quickly, if there are things that I am strong with, uh, you know, I better surround myself with people who can back me up for the weaker parts. And that's, always served me well.
Yeah. And I know that, that career has sort of evolved as a stylist, and then you moved back to New York and started a business. And then I wonder if you could talk about that transition and, what you learned about that. And just to say, one of the reasons I wanted to like be and have a deep conversation about all that is, in our relationship and getting to know you, realizing that the industry you're in is highly competitive. Like you said, kids are coming to you all the time. How do I do it? Right? It's highly competitive. It's very demanding. And yet you are technically more, like you said, more of a freelance. So when a movie's over, you're looking for a job again, and no different than an entrepreneur or me who's,
Yeah.
needs to look for clients. And so I'm just curious, like I was really struck by how that element has been a constant, and yet you've
Yes.
managed to grow yourself and grow your career. And I know it hasn't always been easy. So I wonder if you could just talk about that first big transition that took you out of Hollywood to New York, and what you saw there.
Well, there's, I think, a perfect example of, I thought it happened, all of that business. I thought that was an accident. I thought it happened, that it was a fluke. But I moved back here to New York, where I live now, and uh, really, I did try to get involved in doing some commercial work as a stylist, and it wasn't panning out. And I thought, okay, well, that portion of my life is over. I'm just going to look forward. And because I am a very highly functioning, insane Virgo, I always have loved helping people, friends and family, go through their closets and help edit, and then, essentially I was working as a personal stylist before there was even such a thing. I mean, I wasn't getting paid for it. I just loved doing it. But funnily enough, a friend of mine happened to be working for a blog called Daily Candy, which at the time was the first of its kind. This was around 2002. And there was nothing like Daily Candy. And it was, sort of a daily blast of things you need to know, the best new hair salon, yoga mat, whatever it was. And I was helping her with her closet and showing her how to shop her closet, how to, sort of like, no, you don't need to shop. Or if you do, you just need these 3 items, that kind of thing. And she said, I really think this could be a business. And immediately I started laughing, like, who's going to pay me to do this? Now, of course, it's a very common business. She said, no, I really think this is something. And so she pitched it to the founder of Daily Candy, Danny Levy. And Danny loved the idea. And they wound up doing a story about me. The day after it ran, I had something like 150 emails from people who wanted to hire me. I had no idea what to even call the business, what I should charge. I mean, it was so new and so, but I just was like, great, someone's going to pay me to do something I already love doing. And it completely took off, and I wound up doing it for about 5 years. And through that, I wound up doing a fair amount of on-air commentary, because one thing just led to another. I got a lot of press, and it just kept building on itself. And, had I not said yes, had I not had the curiosity, or even had I maybe, let fear take over, this never would have happened. But I just thought, well, why not? I'll try it. I mean, why not? And I met the most fascinating women, some of whom are still friends, who hired me. I'm still in touch with some of them. And I think the thing that I realized was I loved the makeover aspect. And the way that I would approach every client was empathy. I would empathize with whatever situation they were in: divorce, weight loss, new job, breakup, whatever it was, or just, killing it and has a great job and needs some help. Whatever it was, I went into it with this, creating a sort of backstory in my head, and really trying to understand each client individually and see what they needed from me or what their issues were. And that was the biggest life lesson for me. I started looking at each person, male, female. The very first thing I noticed as I'd walk into the room was something positive. And this was not something I trained myself to do. It just kind of organically happened, where I just started seeing, oh, wow, she's got the best smile. Oh my gosh, he's got a great head of hair, whatever it is. And from there, it would allow me to immediately identify with the person, like the person, and build on it. And then therefore be able to empathize in some way. And now working as a costume designer, for me, the most important quality I can have is empathy for the character that I'm trying to develop. And so it was invaluable to me. And I did love it for a very long time. I mean, it was instant gratification. I'd walk in and an hour later, someone had a big smile on their face, because they felt great. So it was win-win.
Yeah. And so, When we first started speaking, I know that you used a phrase like when you were sharing these kind of stories, and you said something along the lines of I'm just lucky. And then you and I had a conversation, and I would love to have you to articulate. You did a little bit in the story, like the curiosity, the open to yes. But what does that look like to you now? What was it? What was it that was helping you move through those? Because I could imagine it was also, like you said, you didn't know what to do. You were learning on the job. You've never
Yeah.
had your own business. I know there was a lot going on. So, how
Yeah.
would you speak about that now?
After when I look back at it, I realize that the thread, the constant running thread, was that I think I would, once the learning curve started to decrease, I would maybe get a little bit bored. I have a low threshold for boredom. And I'd start to get a little bit bored, maybe a little less motivated. Um, and then, as it was with when I was running this business, I think I was burning out, and I was not getting the satisfaction. I just wasn't enjoying it. And I, that's the other thing with me. I mean, I've always had creative pursuits, and that's something I've learned through you also, that it's not something you can force. And so as I started to get bored with that job, I really started to disengage, and the very thing that made me so good at it wasn't happening. And I was starting to lose business because I just wasn't showing up emotionally. Um, and I started working with a career coach, which is, I think, another common thread was that I took control of the situation. I saw that maybe I was floundering. I was really I plateaued, and I needed I needed a change. So I started working with a career coach who was absolutely wonderful. She could see that I was ready for something to happen, um, but I couldn't manifest it. And as soon as I started working with her and started talking about what it was that I wasn't getting from this job, all of a sudden I started getting more work in that career, which was strange. And I had made up my mind, well, I'm going to leave this freelance life. I'm going to find a full-time job. And I got so busy, I didn't have time to look for a full-time job. Um, and I think that I had become just so much more open to possibility, that maybe things will play out, but I don't have the answer right now, but I need to be in the present. And I just kept following that path. And I will say, it possibly out of the blue, but maybe not. I got a call from a producer uh, who I'd worked with in LA, and he was producing a film and asked if I was still costume designing and would I be interested in joining the film, which sounds absolutely insane, but that is what happened. And I said, absolutely. And as soon as I said yes to that, I realized how much I missed doing it. And I thought maybe this was the missing piece. But I truly believe that that came about because my whole attitude changed. I was feeling open to things. I had my eyes open, my heart open. I was starting to just let things in. And then I got that call. So I'm just a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And so maybe, luck had less to do with it than I always said.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was the one who brought it about because I didn't just sit around in misery. I
That's right.
forced myself to try and figure things out and learn.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No.
Yeah, I love that because I think it's so true that, um, there's a definition of luck out there that is when opportunity and meets preparation, like meaning
Yes.
you're kind of, and I hear in that it's like you were open, you saw, you had enough self-awareness to see that the way you were showing up was not working for you, and rather than just sort of, you know, getting lost in that, you got more curious about you. You got more curious about
Yeah.
what's possible. And then, like you said, I absolutely believe that, and you know this, right? Like that our inner climate is shaping whether we even see possibility or not, you know? So I absolutely think that's it. And I think the openness to explore and that curiosity that you mentioned is also a really beautiful resource. And when we're up against life in our career and what wants to come through new, that's great. And so you got back then into the costume design, and that's what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And so knowing that in that environment, I'd love to explore a little bit, like, that's one of those environments that's known for being fast paced, high demand, big personalities. I'm curious
Yes.
how you navigated that element of it, and what personal insights you've had that have supported you in that.
I think I was so shocked in many ways that I found myself doing that, getting back into that career, that I was so excited and so happy that I just didn't really have time to consider where I was, who I was working with. It was almost like I just ate it up. I just,
Mhm.
so I had this almost a lack of fear because I didn't know any better. And I had a huge fraud complex. I kept thinking, and I know so many people go through this, but I really thought any day now someone's going to be like, "What? Just kidding." Like, "No way. You do not belong here." But I just kept, part of me, there was some instinctual part of me knew that I was good at it. And because and we've talked about this, and I said it earlier, it was the most natural feeling I'd ever had in any kind of work. I just felt so oddly confident, and there was so much I did not know, so much. And every day was a huge learning curve for me. And I really did have to, sometimes I'd fake it, sometimes I'd just be honest and say, like, I don't know. But I just kept, there was just this um, connected feeling I had to what I was doing. It was like I was tethered to it. I couldn't not do it. And I just trusted that. So as much as, there was some fear involved, there was, I just kept going because I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't even picture myself doing something else at that point. I felt like I'd been given a second chance to get back into it, and that I was in no way was I going to squander that.
Yeah.
That was a gift.
Yeah.
And so I worked my ass off, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So, and I still do. I work. It's a very, very demanding, uh, very difficult job.
Yeah.
But when you're in it, you just don't even, you know, you
Yeah.
just go for it.
Yeah. Have you, can you share a time when, like, even knowing you're in the right spot and you love it, where, you had to overcome an internal challenge to really move yourself along, or, get on the other
Yes,
side of something? Great.
there have been so many times.
Yeah.
It's an industry full of egos, and you know, people who don't always play well with others, and um, you know, it's trial by fire. There have
Yeah.
been many there have been many times where, let's say, bad behavior is allowed. Let's say that,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we've all heard stories about what it's like. A director who's mean, and I mean mean, or a producer who, you know, there's that kind of thing. Early on in my career, that happened a lot, and two things. I learned that I'm incredibly stubborn. I am not someone who will ever walk away from a job because the thought of letting people down. That is my crew. That is, you know, uh, the people who hired me, the people who count on me. The thought of like disappointing or not following through is not something I have any context for. Um, the other side of that, though, is I learned a really good lesson, which is sometimes you have to know when to walk away. And I can think of one or two jobs where I probably should have quit because I was being mistreated so badly by the director,
Yeah.
um, who just happened to be a jerk, and that happens. But
Yeah.
I had the didn't realize it, but I did have the internal wherewithal where I could have walked away and I would have still worked. And, you know, I just didn't know that yet. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a really important lesson.
Yeah.
Um, it's huge because, especially in a business like this,
Yeah.
you know, you have to have enough self-esteem and self-respect to know when this is not about you. You know, you're not failing. The other person is failing at their job. Uh, and there's nothing there's nothing I could have done in that situation. Nothing that would have been right for them, or there was
Yeah.
no winning. And so I probably should have walked away.
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that story because I think, again, I know even in my own career, whether it was previous bosses or clients or, where you, yeah, that level, you realize like, oh, this is not okay. But in our younger or in the desire or the conditioning we have about stick it out, whatever it might be, we don't do it.
Yes,
But what I,
the work
I think,
ethic.
yeah, I think what happens though is part of that is we have to learn where our boundaries are, and
Yeah.
sometimes we don't learn it until like we're in it and it's reflection. I think in those, sometimes you're in survival mode, but then you get a little distance and you're like, oh, wait, no, that no more, no longer, or that's a clue to leave.
Well, I think that also speaks to the type of industry I work in, where we all, I think, to a degree, have that um, mentality where we're always in survival mode. You know, things have changed over the years for the better, but you know, people, because we're on a job for either, you know, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but when you're on a job, you are working, and you know, a doctor's appointment that will wait.
Yeah.
Dentist, no, you know, none of us did anything like that. We missed weddings and funerals, and because we're working, well, you can't, you know. And I think that's really evolved, and I see that with the younger people who work for me, and I love it because, you know, they have perspective
Yeah.
and boundaries, and I learn from them because, you know, that's something I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Because I would just power through. I would power through to the point of, you know, be sick as a dog. And until I was felled, you know, with a fever, um,
Yeah.
I just keep going. So,
And so
yeah,
now
that's
what
not
do
the
you,
best way to.
yeah. And what do you do now that helps you sort of create those boundaries? What do you do now?
Well, I think it it definitely comes with, they say getting older is great because you're more confident, and I'm not going to disagree. I mean, I find I'm able to take better care of myself by not personalizing things. I used to personalize everything in the room. Um, if I felt like a boss didn't like me, or if I spent so much time and energy trying to figure out what other people were thinking and what I could do to make things better, and give that person what they needed from me. And instead of just showing up and doing my job, which I am very good at, which is why I was there in the first place, I would get so sidetracked by all of that fluff. And that just doesn't, I just don't have room for that anymore. That has been incredibly liberating.
Yeah. That's really profound, because that idea that we're trying to manage the emotional burden of everyone in the room, or it makes sense from a human or a kind of protective stance. Like, I can think about a boss I had at one point in my career who was really emotional and unpredictable, and then you find yourself trying to predict what won't upset him, or her, and then you're
Of course.
navigating kind of in this tension. But you're right, it's an illusion because we don't have control over it anyway. And then we suffer internally trying to think we can or manage it. And then what I really hear, it's like, no, let me just get comfortable in that I'm going to show up and do my job and be me with the love and the passion and the care I have around it. And all that other stuff we can't control. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other side of that was with the people who work for me. I was doing the same thing with them and always trying to think, what do they need? What is going on? Is this person okay? Oh, are they upset with me? That was the other thing, is like, if someone looked at me funny, I'd be just trying to figure everything out. And I just stopped doing that as well. I had to just know that I was working with adults, and that if someone had a problem, they would come to me and tell me. And if they don't, then everything's great, because that is all I can do. I can't do more than that. I need to do my job. Everyone needs to do their job. Um, and it just, all of a sudden, all that internal chitter chatter, it just dissipated. And now I just kind of do my thing, and it's just so, it's a joy. It's such a different experience for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm curious. You've talked about it, like even from the very beginning, this kind of resilience piece, and I'd love for you to speak more. I know that even that over the last year has become even a stronger sense inside yourself. But what is, yeah, how does that look to you now? I'd love to hear you share.
Well, I'm smiling because part of what I do love about my job is the adrenaline factor,
Yeah,
and that things change all the time. Things, you thought you were shooting a certain scene tomorrow. Well, guess what? It's going to rain, and now we're shooting a scene that maybe you're not ready for. Or, you have to be so adaptable all the time, which I love.
yeah,
I realized I really work well under pressure. I love it. And so I'm putting out fires all day long. I love it. And so if all of a sudden, uh, uh, oh my gosh, Jenny, what are we going to do? We've got blah, blah, blah happening. And I don't know. I just don't know what we're going to do. I would go into quiet stealth, like, okay, well, and then the creative thinking would start. And okay, well, we're doing this tomorrow. It's not ready. What can we do? Or, and then I just start like delegating, and I just felt very comfortable in that kind of unpredictable environment. What I've learned over the last year, I think, and this has been one of my greatest lessons, which is that I started a job almost immediately after you and I worked together. And I started seeing the way that I would react in certain, and react is the right word, react in certain situations, because I was still personalizing things, even though I had been working so hard to stop.
Yeah.
And when I started this job, I noticed there was a different, people I was working with had a different way of working. I felt some tension, and I really wondered, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to get through this? Immediately started to feel defensive, angry. Those are the way I would always react in the past. The change for me happened, and I mean, I saw it happen. I knew what I was doing. I was very aware of it, and it felt incredibly empowering, was that I thought, okay, hang on. These people want me here. These people brought me here. This is not about me. What I'm feeling is about what's going on with them. What can I do to help them feel more confident in their choice of me? What can I do to diffuse the situation? How can I make this better? And I figured it out pretty quickly. I figured out what the issues were. I completely took myself out of the equation, which was very new for me. You know, normally I'd have my bags half packed and just be so, upset. No, I just thought, no, I want this to work, and they need me to show them that it can work. So how can I do that? And I was able to do it. And within days, everything turned around, and it's been truly the best job I've ever had.
That's amazing.
I love it. It's truly my favorite job. And I think I also hold it very close because I saw how much I learned from it in the beginning, and what it has done. I saw that what I got out of being so open and willing to adapt, and willing to take myself out of the equation.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I, in the moment when it was revved up and you were feeling irritated, upset, angry, that moment that you went, wait a minute, let's take my reactivity out of it and just
Yeah.
what's happening. That I think I wanted to highlight that moment because
Yeah.
that's the shift, right? To say, like, wait a minute.
100%.
Yeah. And could you articulate what helped you do that?
I was very fortunate that I quite literally had just come off working with you. So
Yeah.
within a matter of weeks, I think. Um, a lot of what we talked about was still running through my head. And it coincidentally or not, I was faced with a conflict that I'd met or that had been presented to me so many times before. And I saw myself starting to react the same way. And so it was very organic. It was like a light bulb just went off. And I thought, no, I don't want to do this the same way I've always done it. I can make this better. And I also, part of me, and maybe this was just an instinct, I knew that the people I was working with were good people. I've worked with, like I may have mentioned, some not nice people, but I knew these people were good people, and that I just had to give all of us a chance to let it breathe a little bit. And instead of immediately going to that place of getting my back up, I thought, no, this needs some breathing room. Let everybody have a chance to see what we can do and who we are. And it, that was part of it. It was like, I just took that part of myself out of it and just kind of I only came from a positive place, and
Yeah.
it changed immediately.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And I love that because, that moment, as you know, like we've talked about this, but just for the people listening, like the moment we're willing to create any distance between the reactivity and like just a little breathing room. I like the way you're saying it. That wiser, more helpful thinking is natural. And when we're in reactivity and trying to talk ourselves out of reactivity, that often just makes it noisier. But it was actually you saying that language, if I wanted to put that aside, like not my reactivity was, I didn't want to justify it. I didn't want to lean more into it.
no,
Right. And then all these other ideas came to you naturally.
I knew how that story would end.
Yeah.
I've experienced it so many times. It was part of the reason I came to work with you. I knew that that wasn't everything I had to give. I knew that I was getting in my own way. And
Yeah.
so it I just thought, I'm not doing that, you know.
That's amazing.
And I had nothing to lose. I mean,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you gain so much by it.
Oh
It
yeah.
just makes me so happy. Yeah. And, you said something else I'd love to um, just talk about for a minute. You said that part of one of your skills that you've learned is like the chaos and change and having to be agile and adapt. And you
Yeah.
said, so when that happens, I learn to like get quiet, and then all of a sudden you'll start to be more creative. And in a way, I see that's sort of what you did over here. It's like it felt
Yeah.
different. You were like, let me put the reactivity aside. But that's like another way of quieting the noise, right? And then that new ideas came forward.
100%. It was also a byproduct of doing this work because it was a skill I always had. I just
Yeah.
didn't know how to use it, or that I had it.
Yeah.
I'd seen it manifest in other ways, but I certainly had never used it in a scenario like this, in an
Yeah.
interpersonal way.
Yeah.
And it it just it made perfect sense to me. It seemed the only thing to do.
Yeah. That's great.
And I just also was so determined to, and again, I go back to the instinct thing because I knew I was dealing with people who we all wanted the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
So just in my gut, I just knew that it
Yeah.
would be successful.
Yeah.
And that was just, I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, and I can't help myself, but like that's something I've seen over and over again for myself and in my work with people. When we assign ill intent, it makes it even more challenging. So that again, when you got more open, I think common sense comes in, wisdom comes in, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, we all want the same thing. These are good people,
Yes.
and so that I think I love that you're saying that because it's true. I think when we show up with, goodwill, not
Yeah,
only are we more agile and creative, but people feel us. They feel that in us.
that's right. That's right. And they want to work together. And there will, looking back, I can see situations where I thought, you know, I don't have any allies in this situation. And I was wrong. Yes, there were some people around who were not necessarily people I'd like to work with again. Within that context, there were other people who really were doing their best. And
Yeah.
uh, we were kind of all in, let's say, a tricky or stressful situation. But I couldn't see it at the time because I
Yeah.
was feeling so maligned,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that I was not able to find the good ones, work with the good ones, sort
Yeah.
of bob and weave my way through a tricky spot.
Yeah.
And that's a huge skill. That's something that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I will always appreciate now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, for all of us to remember that our experience of somebody is coming from our perception of them, like the moment to moment perception we're having. So we aren't really even experiencing the person, we're experiencing our thinking about them or the situation. So again, just to reinforce one more time, like the letting the reactivity go, we just naturally get more centered. And then from that place, we get more perspective.
It reminds me of something else that we talked about, which was instead of always going into something thinking, how will I adapt to what this person needs or what that person needs? I just started thinking about, what do I need? What do I need from this meeting, this interaction, this?
Yeah.
When I do that, I'm giving the best of what I have to offer to everyone around me, because I'm not distracted by inventing things that other people
Yeah.
are thinking or feeling, which
Yeah.
may or may not be true. I'm just going into it in a very honest way, which is, what do I need from this interaction so that I can do better work for everyone involved?
Yeah.
Works like a charm.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
so big. Yeah. And I just have, one other question, but, and then a couple little small ones. But I'm curious, because it's such a creative industry. I know you're really creative and you love that part of it. How has what's your current point of view on creativity?
Well, I mean, I'm still working that one out. But I think that I find it very difficult as a kind of a type A person to always give my creativity room to breathe again, breathing. But, uh, and that is, uh, for the longest time, I always felt like if I'm not doing something, then, I have such a strong work ethic that the thought of boredom was terrifying to me. Another thing we talked about, and I've really, and it's a work in progress, but I do um, allow myself to do things that are, the old me would have looked at that as time wasting or indulgence, and now I think, oh no, this is essential. I'm recharging my battery. I need to do this, because if it's, let's say, scrolling through Pinterest, or if it's, looking at, a, you know, a fashion blog or whatever it may be, I'm, I'm nurturing that part of me. These are the things I love.
Yeah.
And so, or if I'm just looking at a beautiful book, and just, you could walk into my office and think, well, what is she doing? But now I've learned that this is so important, because you can't, your battery will run out, and it's okay to do things like that. And you should revel in it. I feel lucky that um, I can enjoy doing those things. Like, those things like that make me so happy. And they always say, you know, uh, do the things you love, and you have no idea what ideas you may take away. You may think of a business. You may see a hole in a certain, like, but you've got to do what you love and sit in it and just let it nurture you. And now it's I think it's a true luxury, but I let myself do it. I force myself to do it.
Yeah.
And it has helped me enormously.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I've just loved our conversation, and I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything else that is present for you that you'd love to share?
I think mainly I really feel for young people who are post-college and maybe they were expected to go to law school, or which is all great. But I was one of those people who just did not know what I was supposed to be doing. And had I had someone tell me, it's okay, you're going to figure it out, just try everything. I mean, within reason, and things that have to do with your interests, but don't worry, this is your time to do this. And just say yes, be curious, do the very best you can do, and it will come to you. You'll figure it out. But I think it's the fear that we all have of, disappointing or not doing things on what we consider to be other people's timetables, that it holds us back. So
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I was also, one of those people that did not know what I was gonna do, supposed to do.
so
And,
scary.
yeah, yeah. And I remember like putting this pressure on myself to like find my purpose. And then
Yeah.
that became a thing. So
Oh, yeah.
it's true. It's like follow your nose, follow what you love, follow what you're curious about. And life has a way of like, giving you opportunity and coming back to where we started, to say yes to that and see
Yes.
what you discover about yourself.
Yeah.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much. I really enjoyed connecting with you and hearing, and thank you for being so open as well.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you.
As always, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean a lot to us if you could take a moment to first subscribe and follow wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Hitting the follow button means you'll never miss a show. All you have to do is hit the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you like what you're hearing, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to give us a shout out and review. Most importantly, however, if you know anyone that would benefit from this episode, please pass it along. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about my work, Interverse Academy, or upcoming events, you can check out my website at barbarapatterson.com. You'll find some great resources, classes, and videos, and a lot more. Thank you again for being here. See you next time.